Today I will be disassembling and cleaning and reassembling a carburetor on a 1973 Yamaha DT250. So the first thing we're going to do is pull the cap off of here with the slide, the needle, and the spring. So this is going to be spring loaded. Be careful when you take that apart. There's the spring there. Here's your float top, or your slide top. There you've got a you would have had to pull this apart when you're taking the throttle cable out. But there's your slide there with your needle, and you're able to adjust this needle several different places if need be. There's your slide there. Next we got your choke, and it's just kind of a two-position choke here, and we will pull this apart. What you have to do first is there's a washer right here that works as a keeper. You've got to bend the tab up, and I've already done that to save time, but you bend that tab down to remove the choke assembly. So then what you do is just take a 12mm wrench and just spin this up all the way. Now putting it back together, you do the same thing but in reverse. You'll have to put the several things you got to hold in place here and keep. What I do is start that with 2 or 3 threads, get everything lined up, and then I'll put pressure down on it so that those washers and the keeper back here stay in place. As you can see here, it likes to this holder deal likes to slide back when you loosen it up. So you got to keep an eye on that when you're putting it back together. So we'll go ahead and tighten this the rest of the way up. And even then it just popped out of place there. So you kind of got to keep on watching that as you're putting it together. And before you snug it up, just make sure it's in the right place. And then you can go ahead and tighten it up. And then just make sure it works properly. And there's a plunger in there that just needs cleaned. Next, there's the bowl here. Here's the drain here, and if you're just going to remove the fuel out of the carburetor, just pull this drain here, and fuel will come out of that nipple there. Since we're cleaning it, we're going to pull all 4 of these bottom Phillips screws. And this one's a little more difficult to pull the bowl on it. Just got to be awful careful when you're pulling the bowl that you don't put too much side pressure on it. We can just kind of walk it off like that there. You've got your gasket here, and on this particular carburetor, this main jet fits down into the bottom of this bowl. So you want to make sure that the steel is good here. You remove this. It's a 10mm jet here. This is your main jet, and then we've got your pilot jet, and the pilot jet is all the way down in the bottom there. Move the pilot jet with a flat screwdriver. Make sure you've got good pressure going down when you pull that pilot jet, as those have a tendency to ruin the flat spot for your flat screwdriver. So you want to make sure you got good pressure on it. Now when you're cleaning these, you want to make sure that you can blow through them with compressed air, and then when you hold them up to light, you want to be able to see through them. So now for this pin here, to get to the needle in the seat, you pull the pin, and if you need to adjust that needle, you can bend this tab. You don't want to do it very much, but you want to make sure that when you're holding the carburetor up, that and pushing up on this, that no fuel is leaking. If it is leaking, then you need to replace your needle and seat, and that includes this and your seat here, and you just pull that out. Here is your idle screw here. That's your idle adjust, and all that does is move your slide up and down, and you can adjust that. And then we've got your air fuel screw here, And what you do to adjust that is you screw that all the way in, and then count how many times you screw it in, and then remove it. Count how many times you screwed it in, and then when you're adjusting it, you just pull it out that same number. So it's all the way seated right now. You just pull it out. Generally, it's about the 1 to 2.5 range. So you screw it in. This one was a turn and a half out. So you do half. Another one is a full turn, and another half. That's how I do it there. And then what you want to do is take and you blow through everything with gum out carbon choke cleaner, and then blow through it with compressed air. And make sure there's no debris in this bottom. And I can see here we've got a piece of an O-ring here. Just take and you can just clean that out. I blow through it with carb cleaner, carbon choke cleaner, and blow through all the ports. Make sure those are free from debris, and then also spray it out with carb cleaner. And you can do that several times. This one here I soaked just to make sure that it was very clean. And there's your carburetor there. We'll put it back together now. What we're going to do is take this, and the tab on this is going to be up if the carburetor's upside down. So I know it's confusing because your carburetor generally sitting like this, but you will put this, put your needle in there, and again inspect that needle, make sure there's no wear on that bottom part of that nipple there. Set that float in there, tab. When the carburetor's sitting like this, it goes up, and this pin just slides through. Everything has to be aligned, and you got to be very careful with these aluminum posts here. They break very easily. So you've got your main jet here. Thread that on. You take a 10mm wrench and tighten that up. And then we've got your pilot jet. That'll slide all the way down in there. And then you tighten that up. Your floats are right here, and you want to make sure that those slide up and down freely. When it's got fuel in there, it kind of lubricates those a little bit more. If you need to pull those floats off, just go ahead and pull these here, and they just pull off of there, and then you can just pop them back on. If they don't pop and stay on, then you want to replace those. Make sure the seal is good. And then go ahead and put the, after we tighten this down, I'm needing to replace this O-ring. Otherwise I'd tighten it down now. Go ahead and put this back on there, make sure it seats properly. And this one you make sure it seats properly because that main jet in there will slide down up into this bowl here. So make sure that it seats completely, put all 4 screws back in. And these don't have to be very tight, but you want to make sure they're good and snug. Same thing for this. Okay, so put your choke cable or your throttle cable in, and you slide it down in the larger area there, and then slide it over to that smaller area. And then take this, set it down right on top. Obviously this is going to be on. Throttle cable is going to slide down through the center of that, then go into those holes there. This is going to go on. Then you're going to slide down. There's 2 sides. You got your idle side here, your idle screw side here, and then there's another pin that goes down, and that just keeps this straight. So you want to make sure you get that in the proper direction. Make sure these slide freely. And then when you're going down with this, make sure that your needle is going into the proper area here, so it's not pushing everything up. And then make sure again that you thread that on properly so it isn't ruining those threads. And that is a carb clean on a 70s Yamaha DT250.